Not losing a second on the second split. Check. Strafing is generally slower, but yes, you can strafe. Strafing is slower just because it's more awkward to do. In a perfect world, you want to be holding forward because you want to be walking as straight of a line as possible to your next spot on the ground. And while it's not impossible to do that with strafing, it's considerably harder to do that consistently. There's only a handful of places where strafing... Jeez. Where strafing is a reasonable thing to do. It's not actually slower. When you sprint in this game, it does change your speed in all directions, but... it just does not... like, it's one of those things where it doesn't technically lose you time, but you'll notice that as you do it less and less, you start getting gold splits more often, and you start saving time overall. It's one of those small things which doesn't really matter, but every time you stop doing it, it makes you move faster. I don't know if you've ever had a game where that's been the case. Where there's some small thing that you do, and it seems like it doesn't lose time, but... it's like clipping or crackling. Yes, the audio is buggy. One of the disadvantages of running on an old version of the game is that old versions have bugs, which get fixed in new versions. I'm really looking forward to doing new version runs. Hello? Oh, it missed a split. Somehow. Actually, I know exactly how. Whatever. Yeah, no, because when you were playing it, you didn't have new drivers, right? So, like, the way audio works, new audio drivers come out, and they change the way sounds work and the way other game sound systems have to interact with them. So the audio for this game changed. And my audio drivers changed. So, as a result, old versions are not quite as compatible with new version drivers. The particular bug in this version is to do with the way echo is played. When a sound echoes, it should get quieter. This game has a bad interaction with the echo for the latest audio drivers, and as a result, the echoes are all at the exact same volume as the original sound, which leads to this really horrible experience. I'm really sorry about it. Hello, Williamson. Yeah, I didn't used to update my drivers, but then I noticed that when I updated my drivers, I got better FPS, so I started doing that. And I got fewer random crashes, and everything seemed to run more smoothly. Again, FPS. It's not necessary, but every time you do it, it's a little bit better. New windmill stuff? No. I reset that run before it got there. I did go through town on the first half, and it felt a lot smoother. But, of course it did, because there was one fewer thing to do. That was terrible. No, but Kilda is explaining why he wants to call this game Mario, which honestly seems more apt for Braid. And I do have to agree with you, this game is like 664 puzzles, plus environmental puzzles. So yeah, every time you lose a half a second, it's bad. And those really start adding up. So I apparently have 30 seconds to save in Symmetry, for some reason. I'm a little bit farther away than I like to be, and it's showing. So I'm not convinced that playing this game for an hour beforehand is actually helping me be less tired. I got up to Cloud Cycle and I went really early because I made a mistake in Swamp, which cost me like a minute. And I was pretty sure, and I think I was correct even, that was going to make me miss Cloud Cycle. And as a result, I spent like a minute standing still at Clouds. So... And then I forgot to do the vault, and then I just wanted to reset, even though I was still 2 minutes ahead. It definitely seems like Cloud Cycle's possible with this route. I did fix my mountain one. I think I fixed all my splits. Oh, no, I know I didn't. I didn't fix the stuff in Keep still. It's okay. Those can be wrong. Yeah, I did Walma's route for Keep, or not for Keep, for Sunken Ship, and it felt so much better. Just safer and easier. There's just less pressure. Oops. There's less pressure while doing the EP, which is good, because that EP sucks. And then there's less pressure while doing the boat, which is good, because the boat is also pretty stressful. Yeah, 15 seconds of the time. Yeah, I think my look-throughs were just really sloppy, along with some of the other stuff. Okay. Like, I definitely need a high-quality run to make the 55, but it's certainly possible. So for your sake, Williamson, you're probably going to be grabbing it before, right, like as you start pushing the 109, the 69 cycle more and more, and getting that consistent, you're going to have to start grabbing the 55 super early instead of grabbing the 69 on time or late. And as you start doing that more and more, I can help you get the timings right. But there's going to be a bit of a dead zone. There's like a 5-minute dead zone where you're either going to have to do the top or you're going to have to go there like before jungle. Neither of which seem like really stellar ideas. So, yeah. Things might be a bit weird for you unless you can push over that boundary pretty quickly. Which is entirely on you. Stretch out my toes. Get my neck pillow. In short, try to relax a bit. Being tense really does not help for a 3-hour speedrun. I can't call it a 3-hour speedrun anymore. Let me call it a 2-hour speedrun. It's really not 3 hours anymore. It's like 220. If I had a really great run. Sure. Oh, you're playing TGM too? Nice. Hello, party like Big Mike. I, once again, don't think your name looks very familiar. So, welcome to the Witness. Which I assume you're familiar with. Improving by spurts, yeah, exactly. I've watched people play TGM, but I have to admit, it's only been AGDQ, so... I have no idea what casual, or I guess less hyper-competitive play looks like for that game. But as someone who is also terrible at Tetris, I can understand what improving at Tetris would look like. Yeah, I think Walma can probably also help with doing custom timing, because he had to jump that gap as well, where he was going too fast and then too slow. I mean, everyone who runs 100% is going to have to deal with it, basically. Is a good overview? Okay. Game gets hard, and then game starts hard, gets progressively harder, and has modes that are actually impossible. New speedrun looks interesting. Do you know this game casually? How much of it has already been spoiled for you? I mean, obviously the puzzles are not exactly obvious how I'm solving them, but the flashy things that seem to be not on these little squares are sort of supposed to be a secret. So, if you haven't played the game, then sorry. It's a really great moment of discovery when you find them. And that's been ruined. But to be fair, I do try to label my stream as carefully as possible that these are speedruns. Splits, title, etc. I guess the title doesn't necessarily imply speedruns. I should probably change it to say 100% speedruns. What's available at the highest level? Fair enough. Yeah, the 100% category for this game is all 523 puzzles, all 135 environmental puzzles, and all 6 obelisks, which means that one of the things you have to do is sit through a 55-minute, 30-second video called The Eclipse, which is a lecture called The Secret of Psalm 46 by Professor Moriarty. He would call it a scheme, but I call it a lecture. It's a good talk. I've just heard it about 30 times, so a lot of the points of it have ceased to be as interesting. That said, if you are new to this, I would encourage you to listen to it at least once. It is a very good talk. The reason as to why we have to listen to it will presumably become clear. If you can get a master rank, yeah, I'd probably be happy with a master rank too. That seems like the level of, you know what, on my good days, I can play pretty well. Which, for a lot of games, is honestly all I ever want. I assume if you could get a master rank, you could probably get a consistent clear as well. Because if I remember correctly, a master rank also has a score requirement. And so if you can get a master rank, then you probably are in enough control of the game that you can get a consistent clear. Right, like for me, the allure of speedrunning is the ability to like go over to someone else's game and say, watch this, and just beat the crap out of the game. Which is one of the reasons why I like not running old versions. Oh, M and GM? Wait, which is the one that gets GM for 3 consecutive master clears? Is that a different TGM? Let's see if I catch the same buoy cycle that I did last run. Oops. I caught early cycle, Williams, so 40 seconds faster. But I was standing there for about 20 seconds, so I think I don't need to save as much time as I did to actually make said cycle. Qualification system. I caught the 20. Yeah, it's like a 20-25 or something. I'm probably gonna catch it this run too. This looks like it's going okay. If you're good at anything, go play someone online. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty good at this game, and I am playing against people online. But I don't know that I'm necessarily the best. Okay, they both have an invisible credit roll clear, and it's a TGM3 thing. Okay, that's fine. But yeah, I think for me, Tetris, a consistent clear would be something I'd be happy with. And I feel like getting consistent clears is equivalent to getting a master rating. Invisible credits roll is one of those things that you show off to your friends, and then they inform you that you need a life. And you tell them that they can go get a life as well. And then you move on. Yeah, an awareness of the skill ceiling. I agree. Because almost everyone who speedruns is sort of conscientious of, like, this is the best run. These are the strategies the best runners use. So that's what I should be doing, right? I think I need to be at minus 28 to catch the 20. We'll see. It's going to be close. Oh, I screwed up the quick stop last run too, so I might have a bit of time to save there. But I've definitely gone into some games as a speedrunner saying I'm not ever going to get the best time for this game, because there are people who have played this game for longer than I have and are better than I am, and I don't want to invest the years that they did to get to their level of play. This is one of the few games that I've actually spent that time in, and so it doesn't take years of more practice, it just takes months to get another good time. It's right here. Yeah, TGM seems like a lot of physical skill, which is not something I'm super fond of, but I understand why it's necessary for speedruns, of course. And especially for arcade games. Most arcade games have some sizable component of physical skill. Just because inputting things on a joystick is not the most obvious. Especially if you're used to keyboard and mouse, or really controller. It's basically just a completely different input mechanism. Okay, so I should do whatever. I think there's a better spot to grab this ramp redirect from, but I don't know where it is. I don't really want to waste time finding out. Hardly get bounce back. I'm not sure I know what that term is. Well, if you're starting to be limited by hardware, then that's the point in time where you probably want to invest in better hardware. So, I guess it's up to you then how much money you want to spend on your speedrun. Oh, I see. So if you can't dead zone your stick, it has the same problem as a controller, where you can get pushback if you're off the dead zone. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you don't. Okay, so you're just playing on an not a physical machine, on a simulation emulator. Okay, I think I'm in enough time, but it is going to depend on my quick stop. Also, this trick sucks, so I am not doing it at speed 5. It is not necessary to do it at speed 5 to make this buoy cycle. If it was going to get me a faster buoy cycle, I would do it, though. Bought the board and they put it in. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. You're just at an arcade, so you can't even practice unless you go to another location. Brief stretch. This is one of the first breaks in the run, aside from like the desert elevator, which isn't really a break. Alright. Not looking forward to new quick stops either. It's going to be a pain. Oh, okay. I felt a little bit early, but nope, that was the right tick. That was a very good quick stop, actually. And there's the 20. It's a 20. The cycle starts at 20, but I guess it finishes at a 2040. Okay, cool. 2036. No, that was a legitimate 5-minute lead. I'm going to legitimately get another 5-minute lead this run. I mean, these aren't my PB splits, just so you know. So that's the reason why I can save 5 minutes over them. Realistically, I can only save about a minute or two over PB until we switch to new version. In which case, I can probably save more like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's going to be interesting. A lot's going to depend on... Nice. Nice. A lot's going to depend on this buoy cycle. The EP I just got, the one that was behind me, is part of something that rotates. Well, that thing rotates every 46 seconds. So if you can't save 46 seconds before that point, it doesn't matter. And similarly, there's another cycle called the cloud cycle, which happens every 13 minutes. Right now, I'm attempting to hit the 55-minute cloud cycle, which depends on a lot of my movement throughout the run, because it's reasonably tight. It requires I don't know, I'd say 80% quality play. My PB was like 95% quality play. I made almost no mistakes in my PB. I was 2 minutes early for the cloud cycle in my PB, which is faster than I had ever been. Yeah, these are getting to know the route splits, and these are also getting to know the route runs, just so that you're aware. I'm mostly not going to be resetting these runs, because a lot of this is for getting the practice back that I haven't had for a while. Yep. Entirely my fault. Also entirely my fault. Unfortunately, a large portion of this run involves staring directly at the panels that I'm solving, so it's very hard to actually look over at chat. I will do my best. If I'm unable to read your messages, please hold. My next downtime is probably leaving Treehouse, unfortunately. This is basically back-to-back puzzle solves. I mean, of course, that's the goal of the run, is to make the puzzle solves be as close together as possible, because that's how you don't lose time, but... doesn't mean we always accomplish that, because there are stretches of time where there's simply no way to put the puzzle solves nearer together. There are a bunch of moments when I'm able to stare over at chat, so I will attempt to do it as often as possible. Right now, I can look at chat once I turn this corner. Infinite lock. Oh, you're talking about Tetris thing. Oh, yeah, no. I reset last run after Cloud Cycle. I didn't have to. It was still 2 minutes ahead, but I want to get a slightly cleaner Cloud Cycle grab. Again, somewhat for practice, but also because that's the Cloud Cycle grab I need to be getting to have a good chance at PBing. That's a new one. Too far forward, and there was a little bit of black showing, so I couldn't make the connection. Yeah, I'm a little bit farther behind than I was, or a little bit, yeah, farther behind than I was last run. Last run I was minus a minute here. Yeah, please don't be afraid to talk. I will try. I will make as much time as I can. Honestly, any percent is the worst category for talking, because any percent is so short. So many things have to happen in such a tight period of time. 100% has plenty of moments where it's like, well, now I have to wait for something, so guess I'm gonna go stare at chat. Alright, like, I'm about to take a 2 or 3 second walking moment, which I would not be taking in any percent. Probably more like a 5-second walk, actually. But definitely something I miss with regards to Talos. In Talos, the only time you had to look at chat was when you looked down when you were teleporting out of the world. Didn't screw up keep skip. Good. Alright, this is the 2-minute time save. Actually, no, I guess I'm not that far off. Yeah, I was like a minute 15 ahead last run. I'm only 50 seconds ahead this run. Yeah, this is still old patch. Yeah, I mean, the big hint, there are 3 big hints. The first big hint is actually the diamond reticle. It is now a square reticle. Diamond reticle was not doing enough to prevent motion sickness, so it was changed to a square reticle. Second big hint is the way movement works. In the newest patch, movement has been changed. You no longer come to an immediate stop when you click in to start solving a puzzle. I apologize for the echoes. I'm leaving as fast as I can. Okay. Movement. So when you click in this version, you lose all your momentum immediately. Whereas in the older versions, or excuse me, in the newest version, I'm going to focus on this dumb trick for a little while. By focus, I mean click wildly until it works. Anyways, on the newest version, when you click in, you slide a bit. You keep some of your momentum. It diminishes pretty quickly, but that additional slide means there's about a half a second of time save every single time you stop moving, which is a pretty big deal. Especially in an any percent category where, in any percent, it basically cut like 30 seconds off the time, at least. Oh, the reticle doesn't make a difference. It just lets you know what version it is. But it did make a difference for motion sickness. Diamond reticle is really basically just as good as like a dot in the center of the screen that tells you where you're looking. It doesn't really help prevent motion sickness. The whole point of a reticle is to keep you centered, so that even when you spin around, and as you may have noticed, I spin around a fair bit in this run, you don't lose track of which direction is forward that your character is facing. And a lot of players were struggling with that, and speedrunners were struggling with that as well, when there was no reticle. There's a reason we use one. I don't know if it's necessarily for motion sickness, but keeping track of which direction is forward is hard. And the diamond reticle sort of tells you which way is forward, but doesn't let you know what you're looking at. So it was changed to a square reticle, which is a much better indication of which way is forward. Or sorry, what's under your cursor, rather than just which way is forward. Because the square more closely represents the circle that you get when you actually click in. Alright, Alright, so the next minute time save should be in town, I think. Oops, this way. It's also why the audio is broken. Yeah, oh yeah, and the third indicator is keep skip, which is the one you picked up on. That was patched out. I'm pretty sure it's the release after the version I'm using right now. It's about a year and a half ago. Oh yeah, and I guess another subtle hint is that the new version no longer penalizes you for walking up slopes. So walking up those stairs, or walking up the mountain, or walking up anything is now at basically the same speed as walking forward, which means that you also get to save like 15 seconds because of it. It's kind of dumb. I really wish it didn't happen. And they changed something that you wouldn't notice, but I would, which is the way your cursor moves as you solve panels has been made a bit smoother. It's sort of more generous at corners. It'll push you more into the going around the corner than it used to, but none of you are ever going to recognize that. Yeah, stair walking. Oh yeah, and they fixed a bug to do with sniping audio logs, but I'm honestly not upset about that. That was absolutely a glitch. You used to be able to, so the audio logs in this game, if you're not aware of them, these little boxes on the ground. You click on them, you get a quote from someone about God or whatever. Actually, I think they're all about God. Some of them are metaphors for God. A clock enfolds all succession of time. In the concept of a clock, the 8th hour is meaningless except as followed by the 7th. Something I don't remember. Nicholas of Cusa. But these audio logs, you have to get close enough to them to solve them. And we also assumed that you had to be able to see them. But we actually discovered that's incorrect. As long as you're close enough was the only check that the game was making. It doesn't make any checks to see if the audio log is actually visible. And so that means that you could just start solving them through walls. Like, any walls. And it was kind of dumb. It was kind of cool. We made a joke category out of it, which was honestly a lot of fun to route, which was called All Audio Logs and Panels. Where the challenge was listen to every single audio log in the game in its entirety. And while you're doing so, because the length of all the audio logs is pretty long, run through the entire game and solve every single panel. Too close. That was a lot of fun to route. But that category has gotten a lot slower now that you can't snipe audio logs. That was a lot of what made that category fun. So that category would definitely be run on old version. But I think for the most part, all the categories are going to be new version, especially now that we're pretty sure challenge is faster too. That was the one holdout. And the final indicator is that Kilda is trying to claim that the characters in this game are Mario and Luigi, which I'm dubious of, especially since the model is named Greg. Or Mark, I don't remember. It's a generic male model, so it has a generic male name. Alright. Shadows done. Not quite. Still have to get, where the hell am I supposed to... Shadows done. Bled a little bit of time, but only 3 seconds. You played the game through? Okay. Ah, I see. That's a hell of a misspelling, Hilda, but I guess you can have your own headcanon. But again, as I say, that's a bug, and it would have been... I got it. Oh, cool. I didn't think I got it. I thought I clicked out outside of the ending. Can route that all again? No. No, thank you. I had a thought. Wasn't relevant. Oh, yeah. A casual player could stumble across that bug. It wouldn't be easy to do, But all it would take is them, you know, accidentally clicking in the wrong spot, and suddenly they'd be able to, this is not where I want to be solving this from. Suddenly they'd be able to start an audio log and not know where it was, which isn't really good for your immersion. This game prides itself pretty heavily on immersion. That's why a lot of the bug fixes are sort of quality of life stuff, where it makes the game feel more smooth or play more cleanly, makes the game sound better, etc. Now you're trying to justify your headcanon. I love it. I'm pretty sure that Jonathan Blow... Actually, no. He probably uses QWERTY. I don't think he's crazy enough to use Dvorak. That seems too edgy, even for a man who puts a 1-hour waiting puzzle in his speedrun. Excuse me, a 2-hour waiting puzzle in his speedrun. I have a set way of doing it, and if I do it wrong, it doesn't work. Oh boy. That's why I right-clicked out from that first puzzle, because I was going to get confused otherwise. There's pretty serious muscle memory for those, basically just because of any % town snipes. You use Dvorak? Yeah, you're an edgy kid. Congratulations. Did you learn on Dvorak, or did you switch? Like, if it was the first layout you ever learned, you can probably type pretty well with it. But most people who I ever met who had a really good typing speed on QWERTY and tried to switch to Dvorak never got back to their QWERTY typing speed. Like, they got close, but they got like 90%. I don't know if that's necessarily true, I'm just speaking from experience here. I tried it briefly and decided that the effort required to then have to set up Dvorak for every single device that I use was not going to be worth it, and that if I had to switch between QWERTY and Dvorak, my typing speed was not going to stay fast. And I have only like a 70 words per minute. I'm not actually very fast at typing. I can type fast enough to write essays, and that's about it. Fortunately, and somewhat surprisingly to me too, writing code is not about typing quickly. You can get over 100. Well, congratulations. But I would say you are the exception, not the rule. So this is new town route. It looks remarkably similar to old town route, except that you do a little bit less, and you grab the EPs at slightly nicer times. I honestly think this would have been faster even if we didn't move the tractor out of the where it was. Just because this is a more fluid way to exit. Over here, last one. Right, like this feels really good to do. Also, I love getting to watch that rotate. I'm not writing code at 100. And this is sort of the point, is that writing code is not dependent on your typing speed. You should be spending only like 10% of your time actually typing. So much more of it is design. If you're writing simple code, then yeah, it can take that long. But anything complex requires much more time spent thinking about what you're going to write. The same is honestly true of any kind of writing. I only use code because I'm familiar with it. But for anything that involves actual effort, unlike, say, some of the essays I wrote in high school and college, the tricky bit is thinking about what to say, not saying it. This is some of the worst audio clipping in the late game, and I apologize. If I could fix it, I would. I can fix it. It's called switching to new version, but I'm not about to do that. Okay. Yeah, if your life involves narrating what someone is, or typing what someone is narrating to you, or like typing up what someone has written down, you probably should find a better job. Because that's about as mind-numbing as it gets. What's the Dvorak equivalent of WASD? A good question. I'm actually not certain. I'm not familiar enough with the layout anymore to be able to call out where keys are. But it's probably like AEO or something. Oh, IRC channels. Yeah, that makes sense. Because IRC channels are not about having really deep discussions for the most part. They're just about talking quickly. Especially if you're going to moderate an IRC channel, then you need to be able to ban people quickly. Comma? Really? Oh, is comma really up from O? I didn't think it was. I thought there was another symbol there. Actually, okay, here's a more interesting question than keyboard layouts. So I assume Dvorak hasn't changed, because the computation for what Dvorak was happened a while ago and would be even more of a problem if there were versions of Dvorak. But what Dvorak was based on is frequency analysis. And the frequency analysis for English should, in fact, have changed, because what is common usage for words is very different from what it used to be. A lot more words are more common, there are a lot more new words that have an influence. Right, like the words computer and internet are used pretty often. Or at least a lot more often than they were 20 years ago. Right, the word smartphone. Probably iPhone. I think a lot of people refer to them as iPhones. I don't need you to type out the Dvorak keyboard in my chat, but thank you for being helpful. Quote, comma, dot are directly above. Discord, but really, really old. Yeah, that's what IRC is. Not really. Discord is actually IRC. So IRC is Internet Relay Chat. It's basically a protocol, the same way that like HTTP is a protocol, that specifies what communication is. Twitch chat is an IRC. I'm in fact connecting through an IRC client rather than through Twitch's wonderful web UI. It's changed linearly. No, but I'm not talking about the big letters. I'm talking about the small ones. I'm talking about your Q's and Z's and X's. Twitch chat is an IRC plus, in the same way that Discord is. Because you can do things in Twitch chat that you can't do in IRC. Like, IRC doesn't really have a concept of, what's the thing? It's not whispers, because it does have that idea. There was something that, oh, emotes. IRC does not have any concept of images inlaid with text. But yeah, almost everything at its core is an IRC. IRC is following IRC. Yeah, Twitch chat, yes. No, I see what you mean. Twitch chat is something that's a wrapper over an IRC channel, basically. In the same way that a browser is really just something that's a wrapper over HTTP. Or HTML and HTTP and FTP and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I mean, as I think about it, there aren't that many things that Twitch chat does that aren't just directly supported by IRC. I guess kicking is not really an idea that existed in IRC. IRC really only has a concept of banning, but that's fundamentally what a kick is. A kick is a 1 second or a 5 second ban. Like, that's actually what it is in Twitch. Nah, that was frustrating. This is one of the most intense sequences of puzzles and EPs in the run. So many things to do in the sequence. Screwing almost all of them up, too. Mean timeout? It's called ban. It's plus B for ban. Oh, it's not called kicking in Twitch, though. Right. Yes. You're correct. IRC won't let you delete messages. Well, Twitch also won't let you delete messages. Twitch just pretends you delete messages. Twitch basically just sends an additional parameter, an additional message that says, please ignore the following message ID. And the Twitch client accepts that as erasing something. But the message doesn't actually go away. You can still query their API if you are connecting via an IRC client and get a list of messages, and it'll still be there. I think it means they don't save it long term, right? Like when you're watching a past broadcast that has chat replay, that chat replay, which is basically just a second server with a list of messages, they just don't bother saving it there. They just save that there was a deleted message. But oh shoot. I forgot that was a thing that could happen. You can query data in IRC for a small period of time after it's been sent because of a skew, right? You can pretend that your clock is set wrong. That was a dumb thing. That's gonna lose me a bit of time. It also means I can't get the second snipe, I'm pretty sure. Okay, cool, I got a clip. In this game, you can push through a thin enough wire, like a tree branch that's far away, and it'll still, like, if you push hard enough, basically, if you're moving your mouse quickly enough, it'll go through things. There isn't any actual use for it, but I guess that's one of them. Getting that snipe from a little bit later than you're supposed to. But honestly, the snipes don't save enough time for me to be really considering going for them. I may have to just take them out of my splits so I stop trying. Because the snipes save like 5 or 6 seconds, and I don't need that time to catch the cloud cycle. And given that I don't need that time to catch the cloud cycle, what am I doing them for? They're just going to screw me up like they have for the past 3 runs. And if they can screw me up, then they're not worth doing. My throat was starting to get a bit parched. Hey! Didn't get screwed over by the shadow. Did it miss a split? Did I miss a split? Something went wrong. I'm going to hope it's not an issue. Maybe one of you caught it. Yeah, global cycles make this game interesting. The old runners, the old 100% runners, which was Zemi, DJC, and one other person who I always forget because he wasn't very good, used to complain about the cycles because challenge happened at that point after the cloud cycle. And so they said that, I mean, it happens after Cloud Cycle here too, but they used to say that that was the only thing that differentiated the top runs, and it was blatantly wrong. Ferret, yes. Azurai ran it, but then he stopped, The three competitive people were Ferret, DJC, and Zemophobiac. I call him Zemi because he's young, and I think that name makes him sound younger. Zemi has not run this game in a year. Neither has Ferret. Forgot which puzzle I was on. Good talk. Didn't forget purple. I sound like an old fart. Oh, you're young too, Dilly? Are you younger than me? Oh yeah, you play Talos. No, you don't play Talos. You only play this game. I was gonna say, everyone who plays Talos is young, with the exception of Azure. I think Exo and Kojo are the only two people who are like close to my age now. But everyone else was in high school when they started running it. But the witness people tend to be much older. You're old in internet years. 100% so that you're younger than me. Well, if you haven't graduated college, then you're younger than me. Because I have graduated college and entered the workforce. But that does not necessarily set a timing on your age, so... Yeah, I'm definitely in time to make the CC here. We were in high school when FF7 came out. I didn't follow console games, so I have no idea how old that makes you. Because I don't know when FF7 came out. But I do know that I think I'm the youngest of the witness crew by about 5 or 6 years. I'm not calling you old, I'm calling you older than me. That's all. Played that one. Well, I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed it. But I was never a console gamer. Never able to get used to any control scheme that isn't keyboard and mouse. Something about the way I was raised and what I learned to use computers with. So one of my first games was Myst, which I don't think... it probably got ported to console eventually. It was pretty popular. I know it got ported to mobile, so... Okay, this run is going pretty well. A power PC, yes, I did too. I remember, or at least my father remembers, and I don't remember him actually doing it. I remember playing Myst, but he remembers buying more RAM for our computer, buying like a 256 meg RAM because Myst required more RAM to play it. Which is very humorous now that I have, you know, gigabytes of RAM in my machine. Like 8 gigabytes of RAM. Just so many orders of magnitude more. 4 orders of magnitude more. No, 5 is correct. You have a Switch and you're playing it a lot? How are the Switch's controls, or do you play not with the Switch controllers? Because those seem like, I mean, it's the same sort of idea with the Wii, right? Where it shipped with a new sort of control scheme, and everyone was a little bit dubious of it, but I think motion controls for the Wii were really useful. How are motion controls for the Switch? Has that actually been an enjoyable experience? Or are you doing what a lot of the speedrunners do and just playing on the Pro Controller? My splits are off. Interesting. Oh yeah, to eke out the right drivers. My splits got off in 2 places. Yeah, I remember trying to play some of the old Mac Classic games, and them not really working the way I wanted them to. In SMO, it works well when you shake. The Switch controllers or the Pro controller? This is going to be sketchy. But I'm going to go for it. Oxy-D? No. I don't know that game. Shake kind of vigorously. No, this is fine. It's only 45 seconds. At most. The regular controllers. Okay. 3 of them on the Mac. Favorite puzzle games. I will take a look. A lot of the old games did get preserved and ported around, so it might be possible to pick them up now. I very much so like puzzle games. I played a lot of old puzzle games. I still play a lot of old puzzle games. Up, please. Side of the bush. Made the 55, ladies and gentlemen. I had about 30 seconds or so that I could have been faster without losing time. Yeah, I'm going to bleed a little bit of time here because my PV did not get the cloud cycle at that moment. So that 6 minutes is a little bit of a lie, but not too bad. Only 5.5 minutes ahead. I'm sorry. I think I can save a bit of time on my challenge too. Just on a Yahoo group? Don't know about my Yahoo groups. Yahoo got hacked and I had to shut down my account because I didn't want to have to deal with that. Yeah, I'm glad I caught that cycle. That was what I was resetting to catch. Please perspective puzzles. Don't make me kill you. ZFC old C. Yep, that sounds correct. I have copied this hard drive multiple times, and you can't stop me. Yeah, so I do strafe there, for example. Honestly, we probably could strafe to solve these. It's just too ingrained in my muscle memory at this point. One of those things that might not matter, but you just do it that way because, I don't know, you can. It also means this panel gets to move for a little while, and if you're fast with the blues, it's lined up nicely so that you can see the entirety of it as you solve it. Trying to work out solutions on the fly is a bad idea. Cost me 6 seconds. Meh. Just a little bit panicky now, because I got the hard thing, and now that means I'm on PB pace. My PB is a 2:22:25. So if I am 5 minutes ahead on a 2:27, nah, I need to be a little bit further ahead than that even, huh? I wonder where I lost time. I guess I'll have to compare against Walma's run. Walma had a 1:10 at elevator, I think. So I'll have to see how I'm doing in comparison to that. I should be ahead of Walma by about a minute at elevator, especially if I'm ahead by a minute at buoy. I first did challenge the hard way or the easy way. What's the hard way to do challenge? First time I did challenge, I cleared it in like 550, and then the second time I failed it. I got ridiculously easy pillars, if I remember correctly. But I had also seen people do challenge, so I was not going in completely blind. I knew how the maze worked, for example. Ding. So the reason that I'm getting ding here instead of at the elevator is because I chose to send the boat not around the outside. which would be an extra minute. And if I took that extra minute, I think I would be at the elevator by the time that finished. How did I lose 5 seconds? Panic and brute force your way through. Fair enough. Why did that not split, game? The hell? Okay. Oh, I know I didn't split. Okay, I'll get that when I come back up. I forgot to get the EP. Yeah, I forgot to get the EP at top. So that means that my splits are a bit inaccurate within the mountain. Doesn't actually cost me any time. Well, it does. Costs me a little bit of time. It costs me like 2 or 3 seconds. But it's not a big deal. What? Oh, it went around to the right, up, and then down. Well, that was dumb. That was the old solution. And then I tried to do the new solution with it. There is no particular pressure for the left-hand versus the right-hand pillars for this category. It simply matters the speed at which you solve all the pillars, because you're not going to have to wait on the elevator to ascend regardless. Yeah, I've been bleeding time in this mountain. Very, very definitively bleeding time. So in fact, you could do the right-hand pillars first if you wanted. You could also alternate back and forth, which I considered for a while, but it doesn't seem like it saves enough time. You have to redo all of it? Uh-oh. That wasn't fixed in the new version. I think I'm just going to get it immediately, just so I don't have to think about it. This run makes you feel bad at life. If life is about staring at squares and solving puzzles, then I'm pretty bad at life too. Because I can only do it well in a video game. I lack the physical dexterity to trace invisible lines in the air in front of me. Or maybe I lack the magical prowess. I think I need to work on my magical stat, actually. Need to practice pulling rabbits out of hats or something to improve my int. Keep stopping early there. This run can make you feel bad at the witness. That would be an acceptable thing. This run also makes me feel bad at the witness, but for other reasons. The routing on this section? The routing on this section is interesting. So the trick here is that what we're doing is we're letting that bottom elevator rise all the way up. Otherwise, if you've seen any percent, you sort of stand there for like 30 seconds. You have to go all the way down and up twice. There's no way around that, because you need to get 2 separate EPs. The blue line and then the orange line. Oh yeah, the floor path movement is amazing. I'm really happy we have a cleaner solution. The old solution was like two complete interactions slower to get the orange and blue sorted. Yeah, this elevator has already risen because we spent like a minute running up and back down again. See, Williamson, the moment you solve it. God. I didn't really want to snap into this, but I'm not upset about doing it. It definitely doesn't hurt. And the blue puzzles. Definitely shutting up for these. Because they suck. Not bad. Could have been a little bit better. Those are the hardest ones. The problem with those, so the reason, I mean, it makes sense if you've ever tried to speedrun this game, or I guess any game that has a large number of puzzles in it, but basically the way you do it is with visual memory. So I look at every single puzzle, and by seeing what the puzzle looks like, that's enough information to recall the solution. I can't necessarily recall the solution from scratch, because I don't need to. Well, for these strings of puzzles in particular, it's very hard to call the solutions up from scratch, just because, or call the solutions from memory, from visual memory, because they look so similar. What? Oh, I forgot where the exit was. Good, good. Like, the exit's top left, right? No, it's top right. So that's why that particular string is so focus heavy and so hard to pull off correctly and cleanly, because I am actually trying to remember the solutions there. As opposed to most of the other puzzles where I'm just struggling to input them, I was legitimately blanking on the solution to that for a second. Well, or I guess I just got it wrong. Wasn't blanking. Meh, still maintaining my 5-minute lead though. No sandwich? I'm sorry. I don't like sandwiches. Have you ever seen me with a sandwich? Why would I want a sandwich? Visualization practice for the tetrominoes? Yeah, I understand that. It's like, oh, it's one of these shapes. Alright, the last snipe of the run. Approximately 5 pixels that I'm staring at on my screen. So approximately 0 on yours, and I apologize for that. But unfortunately, it's fast, so oops. We have to do it. These ones are also really bad, but these ones I can memorize as a sequence because the solutions themselves are all fairly straightforward. It just turns into one gigantic puzzle that continues piece after piece after piece. And they do look reasonably unique as well, which helps. If they all looked super similar, especially to old puzzles, then that would be a problem. That's not the exit, that's the exit. I do have a sandwich every night, you're not incorrect. Alright, not forgetting the EP here. But you have not seen me with it because I do not stream my dinner preparations. Somehow that seems like it would not be particularly entertaining to watch. Alright. It is time for the challenge. That ever impossible randomness. And then it's time for the eclipse. Yeah, there is a cooking channel. I'm aware. I could stream myself not cooking very well. Alright. Oh. Alright, I'm going to be shutting up for this. Because it's hard. Like, non-ironically hard. Still giving me good mazes, though. 2, 4, 4, 4, 3. No. Maybe? No. Oh, thank you, game. That's very kind. This is what we call good symmetry. Saved a minute on challenge. Good talk. That was a... What? No. Was that really a PB for challenge? That was a really good challenge, dude. That was a sub 2. That's a PB for challenge. My best challenge before was a 157. Okay. Good. Good. Very good. Yeah. Unless I'm doing math wrong. 110.13 to... Oh, no, I'm sorry. 207. I can't count. You're correct. Math is hard when I'm focusing on things. No, it's a 1013 to 1220. No, no, no. And my PB is not a 157. Gotta upload that separately. No, I just highlight it. But it's not, unfortunately. I don't have to do anything. I didn't forget anything this time. Still a very good challenge. Sub 230 is extremely good. Oh, no, I have to do a few video things first. Math is hard, dude. It's not like I have a math minor or something. Blah. There. There.
Or you. This stuff's easy to test. Got people. This, scientific.
Who's ready? My splits are wrong.
Commercial district. But like so many other New England cities, the advent of shopping malls had, by the early 70s, turned it into a ghost town. Worcester's solution to this problem was decisive, to say the
So,
least. The city's elders
this is a PB.
apparently decided that
Probably.
if they couldn't beat them, they would join them. And so, several
Depends a
square
little bit
blocks
on
at
Windmill.
the heart of the city were bulldozed into oblivion.
I'm definitely going to
Destroying dozens
play
of
Windmill
family
safe. There's no
businesses,
reason to do the super risky
including the
strats.
site of a pharmacy once operated
For the
by my
first blade.
great-grandfather. In their place
Okay.
was erected a vast
I'm
three-level
going to
shopping
go get a
complex
book.
with cinemas and
If
food
you do
court.
not want to listen to Professor
When the
Moriarty,
dust settled, only a
Ghost
few
is the cutoff
forlorn
point, yep.
blocks of the old Worcester
if you do not want to
remained
listen to Professor
standing.
Moriarty talk for the next
My Radio
55
Shack
minutes,
store was in one of those
I would
blocks.
strongly encourage you
Then,
to also
to
go
add
get a book.
insult to
Or,
injury,
hell, I
Radio
don't know,
Shack
anything
opened
else.
A brand new location
Trust me, I will
inside
not
the
be
shopping
offended.
center,
I have heard this speech
less than
so many
500
times.
feet from my
If you
store.
haven't, it's
So
not a
now
bad speech.
patrons had a choice between a clean,
Unfortunately, you missed the
well-lighted
beginning of it, but,
establishment with
you know.
uniform security and acres of
Get a
convenient
Netflix.
parking,
Just make sure it's a short
or a
one.
shadowy hole in a seedy
Okay,
old
I'm gonna get
office
a drink of
building
water, use the
next to
bathroom.
an adult movie theater.
See you all in a little bit.
Consequently, I had plenty of time to fool around with the new computer. I taught myself basic programming. Then I learned Z80 assembly. Both, of course, so that I could write games. I also created self-running animated demos, which ran all night in the store window for the edification of the winos who peed in our doorway. Strangely enough, the few customers we had didn't seem to be interested in our new computer, even after the 16K memory upgrade. In fact, most of the people who set off the buzzer on their way through the front door weren't there to buy anything at all. They were there to exploit a free promotion, which was the bane of Radio Shack employees for over 40 years. The Battery of the Month Club. The idea of this promotion was simple. Customers got a little red card upon which was printed a square for each month. 12 times a year, the lucky sales clerk got to punch out a square and give the customer one brand new AAA, AA, C, D, or 9-volt battery. Of course, customers weren't allowed to choose just any grade of battery. At the time of my employment, Radio Shack offered 3 different levels of battery excellence. First were the alkalines, powerful, long-lasting, and expensive, hanging behind the counter like prescription medication in gold-embossed blister packs. These were most certainly not available through the Battery of the Month Club. Next were the high-end lead batteries, sturdy, dependable batteries, moderately priced, and prominently displayed near the front of the store. These were also not available through the Battery of the Month Club. Finally, at the bottom of the barrel were the standard lead batteries. These were literally piled in barrels, cunningly located way at the back of the store, in a dark corner near the TV antennas. Remember TV antennas? Customers who came in looking for their free Battery of the Month had to walk the entire length of the premises, past the CB radios and stereo headphones and remote-controlled racing cars. Nothing would stop them. On the first day of every month, like clockwork, those customers came in waving their little red cards. I would look up from my programming and wave them to the back of the store. It didn't matter that the batteries were only worth 29 cents. It didn't matter that most of them were already half dead. They came, they grabbed. And as far as I can remember, not one of them ever paid for a damned thing. I was such a crappy salesman. I was young and foolish. I thought my education in game design was happening at the keyboard. I almost missed the lesson coming through the front door. Fortunately, I wasn't the only person fooling around with games on micros. All over the country, people like me were experimenting. Scott Adams was coding what would soon become the world's first commercial adventure game. Remember adventure games? My future employer, Infocom, was being founded, along with other legendary companies like Online Systems, Sirius, Personal Software, and SSI. Those were exciting times. Teenagers were making fortunes. games were cheap and easy to build. The slate was clean. But in 1979, the biggest news in gaming had nothing to do with computers. On the morning of the autumn equinox, September 20th, a new children's picture book appeared in the stores of Great Britain. This picture book was rather peculiar. It consisted of 15 meticulously detailed color paintings, illustrating a slight whimsical tale about a rabbit delivering a jewel to the moon. On the back jacket of the book was a color photograph of a real jewel, shaped like a running rabbit, 5 inches long, fashioned of 18-karat gold, suspended with ornaments and bells, together with a sun and moon of blue quartz. According to the blurb underneath, this very jewel had been buried somewhere in England. Clues pointing to its location were concealed in the text and in the pictures of the book. The treasure would belong to whoever found it first. The book was called Masquerade. It was created by an eccentric little man with
Alright, did some
divergent
laundry,
eyes
some
and a
dishes.
talent for
Still
mischief
have another
named Kit
30
Williams.
minutes, 50 minutes to go.
Within days, the first
I'll
printing
be reading.
was
I'm not
sold
gonna have
out,
my headphones on
and the
because
empire that never
I
sleeps
can't. Actually, no, I
found
can do it.
itself in the grip of
Aha!
rabid
Now I can't
fever.
hear anything because I've just turned my headphones all the way
Excited
down.
readers attacked
You
the
all can still
paintings
hear
with
things.
rulers, compasses, and protractors.
I'm going to read a book.
Magazine articles and TV specials dissected
I guess
the
I could actually
clues,
have narrating
floated
sessions. I could
theories,
mute Moriarty and
followed
do some
with
book
keen
reading.
delight
That might
the
be fun.
reckless exploits of the fanatics.
I think for right now, though,
One
Moriarty
obscure
is fighting me a bit for volume.
unfortunately known by the
Even
nickname
though I have my
Rabbit
mic turned
Hill,
up and the game turned
was
down.
so riddled with holes
But I could definitely mute the
excavated
game
by
for this bit,
misguided treasure
or lower it
seekers
considerably.
that the authorities had to erect
I am reading.
signs assuring the public
If you're familiar
that
with
no gold
his Dark
rabbits
Materials,
were to
the
be
Golden
found
Compass
there.
series, I'm reading one of the
Some
companion novels.
hunters
It's
ended
called
up
Once Upon a
seeking
Time
psychological
in the North.
counseling for their
And I've also
obsession.
got Lyra's Oxford, which is the new
Craze
companion
leapt
novel.
over the Atlantic
I recently
Ocean
reread the
and
series because
invaded
he's coming out
America,
with a prequel
France,
series, which I'm interested
Italy,
in.
and Germany.
So,
It sold over 1 million copies in a few months, a record unrivaled by any children's title until the advent of Harry Potter. Over 150,000 copies were sold in foreign translations, including 80,000 copies in Japanese, despite the fact that the puzzle was only solvable in English. It didn't matter that the Masquerade jewel was only worth a few $1,000s. Many seekers spent far more than that in their months of exploration and travel. It was the thrill of the chase, the possibility of being the one. Treasure hunts, secret messages, and hidden things seem to exert an irresistible appeal. They're fun to look for and to talk about, and this fact of human psychology has been exploited in computer games since the earliest days. It finds expression in the hidden surprises we call Easter eggs. Atari's Stephen Wright is credited with coining this term in the first issue of Electronic Games magazine. The first Easter egg in a commercial computer game appeared in an early Atari 2600 cartridge called, simply enough, Adventure. By a sequence of unlikely movements and obscure manipulations, players could discover a secret room where the words "created by Warren Robinette" appeared in flashing letters. Over the decades, Easter eggs and their evil twin, cheat codes, have become an industry within an industry. Entire magazines and websites are now devoted to their carefully orchestrated discovery and dissemination. They're part of our toolkit, our basic vocabulary, the language of computer game design. Computer gamers may have been the first to refer to hidden surprises as Easter eggs, but we certainly weren't the first to use them. Painters, composers, and artists of every discipline have been hiding stuff in their works for centuries. The recent advent of VCRs and Laserdisc players with freeze-frame capability exposed decades of secret Disney erotica. Thomas Kincaid, the self-appointed painter of light, amuses himself by hiding the letter N in his works, A number beside his signature indicates how many N's are hidden in each painting. Picasso, Dali, Raphael, Poussin, and dozens of other painters concealed all kinds of stuff in their paintings. A favorite trick was hiding portraits of themselves, their families, friends, and fellow artists in crowd scenes. El Greco loved dogs, but the Catholic Church forbid him from including any in his sacred paintings. So he hid them, usually within the outlines of celestial clouds. Composer Dmitri Shostakovich chafed under the political censorship imposed by the Soviet Ministry of Culture. His symphonies and chamber works are loaded with hidden signatures and subversive subtexts, which, had they been recognized, would have sent him to Siberia. Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute, is filled with musical allusions to the rituals of the Freemasons, the ancient secret society of which he and his mentor Haydn were members. But the most famous purveyor of Easter eggs is that champion of the late Baroque, the ultimate musical nerd, Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach was a student of gematria, the art of assigning numeric values to letters of the alphabet. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, etc. By comparing, sequencing, or otherwise manipulating these numbers, secret messages can be concealed. Bach took particular delight in the geometrical numbers 14 and 41. 14 is the sum of the initials of his last name. B equals 2, A equals 1, C equals 3, and H equals 8. 41 is the sum of his expanded initials, J.S. Bach. These two numbers show up over and over again in Bach's compositions. One of the better-known examples is his setting of the chorale Vor deinem Thron. The first line of the melody contains exactly 14 notes, and the entire melody, from start to finish, contains 41. Another of Bach's favorite games was the puzzle canon. A canon is a melody that sounds good when you play it on top of itself, a little bit out of sync. Frere Jacques and Row, Row, Row Your Boat are familiar examples of simple, two-voice canons. But a canon can employ any number of voices, and you don't have to play each voice the same way either. You can change the octave, transpose the key, invert the pitch, play it backwards, or any combination. Finding melodies that make good multi-voice canons is a fussy and difficult art, of which Bach was an undisputed master. Now, in a puzzle canon, the composer specifies the basic melody and the number of voices, but not the relationship of the voices. The student has to figure out the position and key of each voice, and whether to perform them inverted and/or backwards. Bach wrote quite a number of puzzle canons. The most famous, BWV 1076, is part of a fascinating story. One of Bach's students was a fellow by the name of Lorenz Misler, founder of the Society of Musical Science. This elite, invitation-only institution devoted itself to the study of Pythagorean philosophy and the union of music and mathematics. Its distinguished membership reads like a who's who of German composers, including Handel, Telemann, and eventually Mozart. Applicants for membership in the society were required to submit an oil portrait of themselves, along with a specimen of original music. With nerdly efficiency, Society member number 14 decided to combine these admission requirements into a single work. He sat for a portrait with Elias Haussmann, official artist at the court of Dresden. This portrait, which now hangs in the gallery of the town hall in Leipzig, is the only indisputably authentic image of Bach in existence. The Haussmann portrait shows Bach dressed in a formal coat with exactly 14 buttons. In his hand is a sheet of music paper, upon which is written a puzzle canon for 6 simultaneous voices. In 1974, a manuscript was discovered which proved that this canon was the 13th in a series of exactly 14 canons based on the ground theme of the famous Goldberg variations. As if these musical gymnastics weren't enough, Bach liked to hide messages in his compositions by assigning notes to the letters. His initials, B-A-C-H, correspond to the pitch sequence B flat, A, C, and B natural in German letter notation. This theme makes its most memorable appearance in the last bars of his final composition, The Art of Fugue, published soon after his death in 1750. The word fugue comes from the Latin fuga, which means flight, as in running away. So the art of fugue is the art of flight, the art of taking a theme and running with it. Bach wrote hundreds of fugues, but none as sublime as this sequence of 14. In the last and most complicated fugue in the series, the first and second sections develop normally. This is followed by the B-A-C-H signature, and then suddenly, without any warning or structural justification, the fugue stops, dead in its tracks. One of the composer's 20 children, his son Carl Philipp Emanuel, claimed that Bach died moments after those last few notes were written. This story is probably apocryphal. The Easter eggs in Bach's music are a pleasant obscurity, known chiefly to professors and students of Baroque music. But in March of 2002, when this lecture was first delivered, those Easter eggs were the talk of the entire classical music industry. Sitting near the top of the classical music charts that month was a compact disc on the ECM label called Morimer. It was performed by the Hilliard Choral Ensemble, together with a talented but, until then, little-known violinist, Christoph Poppen. The music on Morimer is based on a geometriacal analysis of Bach's Partita in D minor for solo violin. This analysis, by German professor Helga Thon, assigns numeric values to the duration of notes, the number of bars, and the German letter notation of the partita. In doing so, she claims to have discovered the complete text of several liturgical ceremonies encoded in the notes. The CD presented these hidden texts superimposed over the original music. The result was strangely melancholy, dark, haunting, and very, very popular. Quite a few music critics attacked this disc. They didn't buy Professor Thon's analysis, dismissing it as a combination of numerology and canny marketing. Their caution was not without basis. Numerology is a slippery slope down which many a fine mind has slid to its doom. Allow me to offer an amusing anecdote from my own experience. Back in the early 90s, before the internet took off, one of the more popular online bulletin board systems was a service called Prodigy. I bought an account on Prodigy so I could join a fraternal interest group and gossip with fellow members around the country. One day, a stranger appeared on our bulletin board. Right away, I knew we were in trouble. This fellow, whose name was Gary, began spouting all kinds of apocalyptic nonsense about worldwide conspiracies, secret societies, and devil worship. At first, we tried to be polite. We questioned his sources, corrected his histories, logically refuted his claims, and tried to behave in a civilized manner. But instead of soothing him, our attention only made him worse. His conspiratorial warnings became urgent, approaching hysteria. He began to threaten people who disagreed with him. To coin a phrase, Gary went all uppercase. But his most urgent warnings weren't about the gays, the Jews, the Rockefellers, or the Illuminati. According to Gary, the greatest enemy of mankind was Santa Claus. Gary claimed to possess a secret numerical formula that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Santa Claus was an avatar of the Antichrist. Intrigued, we pressed Gary to reveal his formula. In doing so, we walked right into his trap. We should have known he had a book to sell. I fell for it. I sent him the $15. Less than a week later, the book arrived. Above an ominous photograph of the Washington Monument was emblazoned the title, 666, The Final Warning. Inside this privately printed 494-page monster, Gary reveals a simple geometrical formula, which he claims was developed by the ancient Sumerians. This formula assigns successive products of 6 to each letter of the alphabet. A equals 6, B equals 12, C equals 18, etc. Imagine my dismay when I applied this ancient formula to the name Santa Claus and obtained the blasphemous sum of 666, the biblical number of the beast. I went on Prodigy and reported to the stunned members of our interest group that Gary was right after all. There could be no doubt that according to the unimpeachable wisdom of ancient Samaria, Santa Claus was the Antichrist. I then went on to point out several other names which, when submitted to Gary's formula, also produced the sum 666. Names like St. James, New York, and New Mexico. Soon the bulletin board was filled with discoveries like computer, Boston tea, and most sinister of all, sing karaoke. Gary left us alone after that. I got my $15 worth. But Gary is hardly the first person to connect secret codes to the Bible. People have been looking for Easter eggs in the Bible for hundreds of years. The Hebrew mystical tradition of Kabbalah can be described as a geometrical meditation on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The advent of computers has made the application of numerology to the Bible fast and efficient. The latest spate of Bible searching was instigated by a book published in 1998 by Michael Drosnin, a former Wall Street Journal reporter. His book, The Bible Code, applied a skip cipher in which every nth character in a text is combined to form a message. By applying his skip cipher to the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, Drosnin claimed to have discovered predictions of World War II, the Holocaust, Hiroshima, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin and both Kennedys, the moon landing, Watergate, the Oklahoma City bombing, the election of Bill Clinton, the death of Princess Di, and the comet that collided with Jupiter. He also found predictions of a giant earthquake in LA, a meteor hitting the Earth, and nuclear Armageddon, all scheduled to occur before the end of the last decade. The Bible Code spent many weeks on the bestseller lists, spawning several sequels and dozens of imitators. The Bible has certainly attracted its share of crackpots, but for the real hardcore egg hunters, nothing can rival the ingenuity, the tenacious scholarship, the stubborn zeal of those who seek the answer to the ultimate literary puzzle. A poisonous conundrum that has squandered fortunes, destroyed careers, and driven healthy, intelligent scholars to the brink of madness and beyond. Who wrote Shakespeare? The essays and books devoted to the Shakespeare authorship problem are sufficient to fill a large library. Several such libraries actually exist. Not even a day-long tutorial, much less an hour lecture, can begin to do justice to this complex, bizarre, and dangerously tantalizing story. Nevertheless, for the unacquainted, I will attempt to summarize the issue in a few paragraphs. The undisputed facts of Shakespeare's life and career could be scribbled on the back of a cocktail napkin. We know for a fact that a man named William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in or around the village of Stratford-upon-Avon. We know that he had a wife and at least 3 children. We know he bought property in Stratford, was involved in several lawsuits with his neighbors, and died there in 1616, aged 52. We also know that during those same years, a man with a last name similar to Shakespeare worked as an actor on the London stage, eventually becoming co-owner of some of the theaters there. We also know that about the same time, a number of most excellent poems and plays were published in London under the name Shakespeare. We do not know for a fact that the landowner in Stratford and the actor in London with a similar last name were one and the same man. We do not know for a fact that either man had anything to do with the poems and the plays. All we know is that those poems and plays have, in the 400 years since their composition, come to be regarded as a pinnacle of Western culture. The works attributed to Shakespeare appear to have been written by a man or woman who knew something about just about everything. They're filled with references to mythology and classic literature, games and sports, war and weapons of war, ships and sailing, the law and legal terminology, court etiquette, statesmanship, horticulture, music, astronomy, medicine, falconry, and, of course, theater. Therein lies the problem. How could a farmer's son of uncertain schooling, from a mostly illiterate country village, a man of practically no account at all, wield such encyclopedic learning, with so much eloquence and wit, so much wisdom and human understanding? For the first 150 years, nobody questioned the traditional history of the bard. Then, in the late 18th century, Reverend James Wilmot, a distinguished scholar who lived just a few miles north of Stratford, decided to write a biography of the famous playwright. Dr. Wilmot believed that a man as well educated as Shakespeare must have owned a fairly extensive library, despite the fact that not a single book or manuscript is mentioned in his will. Over the years, he speculated, some of those books must have found their way into local collections. And so, the good Reverend Doctor scoured the British countryside, taking inventory of literally every bookshelf within 50 miles of Stratford. Not a single book from the library of William Shakespeare was discovered. Neither were there found any letters to, from, or about Shakespeare. Furthermore, no references to the folklore, local sayings, or distinctive dialect of the Stratford area could be found in any of Shakespeare's writings. After 4 years of painstaking research, Dr. Wilmot concluded, to his own dismay, that only one person contemporary with Shakespeare of Stratford had ever demonstrated the wide-ranging education and expressive talent needed to compose those poems and plays. That man was the multilingual author, philosopher, and statesman, inventor of the scientific method, chancellor to the courts of Queen Elizabeth and King James, Sir Francis Bacon. Dr. Wilmot never dared to publish his theory, but before he died, he confided it to a friend, James Cowell, who, in 1805, repeated it to a meeting of the Ipswich Philosophical Society. The members of the society were suitably outraged, and the scandalous matter was quickly forgotten. Then, in 1857, a lady from Stratford, Connecticut, published a book called The Philosophy of the Plays of Shakespeare Unfolded. In this book, Miss Delia Bacon, no relation to Francis, claimed that the works of Shakespeare were written by a secret cabal of British nobility, including Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Philip Sidney, as well as Sir Francis Bacon. Delia Bacon's book electrified the world of letters. Battle lines were drawn between the orthodox Stratfordians and the heretical Baconians. Literary societies and scholarly journals were formed to debate the evidence. Hundreds of pamphlets, newspaper articles, and essays were published defending each side and ridiculing the opposition with that self-aggrandizing viciousness peculiar to tenured academics. Armed with her explosive book, Delia Bacon journeyed to Stratford-upon-Avon and, unbelievably, obtained official permission to open Shakespeare's grave. However, when the moment came to actually lift the stone, Delia's self-doubt precipitated a catastrophic nervous breakdown. She later died penniless in a madhouse. Around 1888, things began to get a bit out of hand. U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly of Minnesota became interested in the Shakespeare controversy. One day, browsing through his facsimile copy of the First Folio of 1623, he noted that the word bacon appeared on page 53 of the Histories and also on page 53 of the Comedies. He also noted
IXO.
that
Yeah,
Sir
this
Francis
run went
Bacon
pretty well.
had written
But
extensively
to be fair,
on the
last run went
subject
really
of
terribly,
cartography.
so this is a bit of a balance
Donnelly
of both.
began counting line and page
The only
numbers,
really big
adding and
mistakes this
subtracting
run,
letters, drawing
aside from the fact
lines
that
over
the intro
sentences,
game could have been a little
circling
bit
words,
faster.
and
It
crossing
didn't matter,
them
I
out.
caught the early buoy
The
cycle.
result was a complex and virtually
Mountain 1,
incomprehensible algorithm,
some of that time loss is
which he
fake, some of
claimed
it's
was
real. I
invented
think it
by
could have been about 10
Bacon
seconds
to
faster
hide
there.
secret
Mountain 2, those
messages
20 seconds lost
inside
are also
the
real.
First Folio. The greatest Easter egg hunt in the history of
I
Western
want to say Under the Mountain could have been
civilization
faster,
had
but
begun.
honestly it was pretty clean.
Here are just a couple of the sillier highlights.
Yeah, everything pre-Cloud Cycle
A
doesn't
doctor
tremendously
named
matter.
Orville Owen
I could have
of
been about 20
Detroit
seconds faster at
constructed
Cloud
a
Cycle, and that's
bizarre
it.
research tool he called
20 to
the
30.
Wheel of Fortune. This wheel consisted
aside
of
from that,
two
I'm pretty happy
giant
with this
wooden
run.
spools wrapped with a strip of canvas 2 feet wide and
There's still a bit
1,000
more to
feet
do,
long.
and it's going to be a little bit longer than
Onto
it was
this
last
canvas,
run.
he glued
But my
the
PB is
separate pages of the
22:25,
complete works of Bacon, Shakespeare,
so I only need to
Marlowe,
save 6
Green,
minutes flat.
Peele, and Spencer,
Is that right?
together with Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. By cranking the spools
No.
back and forth, Dr. Owen could quickly zip across the pages
I can't do
in
math.
search
Yeah,
of
no,
clues
6 minutes
and
puts me sub 22,
cross-references.
yeah. So 6
Employing
minutes,
a large
I can lose
team
37
of
seconds and I still
secretaries and
record.
stenographers,
Record's at
Owen
2:22:02.
claimed to have uncovered a complete alternative history of Elizabethan England, as well as several entirely new Shakespeare plays and sonnets. Listen to this hidden verse, supposedly penned by the mighty bard himself, which inspired Dr. Owen to build his Wheel of Fortune. Take your knife and cut all our books asunder, and set the leaves on a great firm wheel, which rolls and rolls, and turning the fickle rolling wheel, throw your eyes upon Fortune, that goddess blind, that stands upon a spherical stone, that turning and inconstant rolls in restless variation. After publishing 5
Well, I'm going to
thick
switch to
volumes of
the
this
sliding
rubbish,
category,
Owen
so
announced
I'm going to
the
have to get used to
discovery
that
of an
movement.
anagram,
So I think it's going to be
indicating
at least a couple of
that
weeks
Bacon's
until I get used to the
manuscripts
movement
were buried
and
near
the feeling.
Chepstow Castle
But
on the
definitely,
River Wye.
I'm definitely have to play around with
Owen
Cloud Cycle,
spent the next
because
15
if I'm already
years
this tight on
and
Cloud Cycle,
thousands of
then I don't know
dollars
where else I'm going to be
excavating
saving
the
time.
bed of the river
Right, Cloud
with
Cycle's
boat
in its normal
crews
place,
and
so there
high
isn't that much time to
explosives.
save.
He died before
I mean, I'll
anything
see,
was
right?
finished.
Like, I think it's going to take at least a week to get
A fellow
as
named
comfortable with the new
Arnsberg
movement,
wrote an
100%
entire
as I am
book
now.
based on the analysis of the significance of a suspicious crack.
And then
in
we'll
the
have to
tomb
see what
of
sort of times I
Bacon's
can put up
mother.
at Cloud Cycle. I'm probably going to spend a
A
week
ray
getting
of
Cloud
sanity
Cycle early,
finally
getting Cloud Cycle
appeared
early,
in
and doing like
1957.
floor 1 before Cloud
To those
Cycle.
familiar with the science of
And once I'm
cryptology,
comfortable enough
the
with
name
doing some of
William
floor 1,
Friedman needs
like doing,
little
once I can get
introduction.
all of floor 1 pre-Cloud
During
Cycle,
World
which
War
is what I
II,
got in my
Colonel Friedman was the
old
head of
PB,
the US
that's
Army's
when I need to start looking at
cryptoanalytic
moving it
bureau.
again, or
He is
doing extra
credited
stuff
with
beforehand.
cracking the Japanese
Probably at that
Empire's
point I'll
most
start doing
sensitive
cinema.
cipher.
Everything in
After
cinema
the
except
war,
for Eclipse
the colonel decided
before
to
Cloud
apply
Cycle.
his expertise to the study of the Shakespeare ciphers.
And that should make this also a
He
bit faster.
interviewed several of the experts in the field and prepared a detailed scientific analysis, which he published
But we'll
under
see.
the title The Shakespeare Ciphers Examined. His conclusion? In a word, bunk. According to the standards of cryptologic science, not one of the hidden messages purportedly discovered in Shakespeare's works was plausible. The rules used to extract these messages from the texts were non-rigorous, wildly subjective, and unrepeatable by anyone except the original decipherer. The people involved were not being dishonest. They were channeling their preconceptions. They were trapped in a labyrinth of delusion, mining order from chaos. Anglers in a lake of darkness. Lear, Act 3, Scene 6. You would think that Friedman's cold and ruthless exposure would be enough to
Yeah, I
silence
figured out.
the
I think next
heretics
time,
once
next
and for
eclipse,
all.
because I'm going to be doing eclipses,
Not a
this
chance.
week probably, but next week.
Books and TV
The next
specials and
eclipse run, I'm going to do
websites
some
and
reading
conferences and
out loud,
doctoral
because I already am
dissertations
reading.
keep
Like, I've been
right
reading a book
on
this entire
coming.
time. I can just
I should
read
point
it
out
aloud.
that
Why
the
am I so far
Shakespeare
ahead? Again, this
authorship
isn't my
issue
PB.
is not
My PB
only
is
the
a
preoccupation
222.25.
of cranks
This is
and
first
weirdos.
run with a new route,
A
or
substantial
second run with a
number
new
of
route.
respected authors
So
and
it was pretty
Shakespeareans
terrible.
have expressed serious doubts about the traditional origin of the
Biggest
plays.
mistakes in last
The
run
list
were
includes Nathaniel
at Keep.
Hawthorne,
I failed
Ralph Waldo
doing
Emerson,
one of
Walt
the
Whitman,
EPs. Or
Henry
yeah,
James,
the
Sam Clemens,
Couch
Sigmund
EP.
Freud, Orson Welles, and
And
Sir
I
John
guess I also
Gilbert.
made a mistake in Swamp. Oh yeah, I left to get Cloud Cycle as Swamp.
Living
The
skeptics
new route's
include
differences.
the
So the
artistic
old route
director of the New
did
Globe Theater, Mark
a
Rylance,
modified any
Michael
percent
York,
run.
Derek
So
Jacobi,
it went
Kenneth
um,
Branagh,
to
and
Keep,
even that
and then
most
from Keep
revered
it
and
went
scholarly of
to,
contemporary
or I'm sorry, it went to
Shakespearean
Quarry, and then from
actors,
Quarry it went to
Keanu
Shadows, and then to
Reeves.
Keep,
The
and then to
current
Town.
leading candidate for the authorship
So
is
following the
Edward
any percent
de Vere,
route.
the
The new
17th
run uses
Earl
the
of
all
Oxford,
lasers route, which goes
a
from
theory
Quarry to
first
Treehouse, and then
proposed in
Treehouse to Keep.
1920 by an English
Which is just
schoolmaster
faster.
with the
It's just 2 minutes
unfortunate
faster
name J.
on
Thomas
movement time.
Beanie.
But the other big thing that changed is what we're
What
ending
is it
on. So
about
we used to
Bob,
end on
the Bible,
Thundercloud,
and the
and
works
now
of
we're ending on the
Shakespeare
boat EPs.
that inspires
We
this
just do like all of the boat
intense
EPs,
scrutiny?
starting
Nobody's
at
looking for
the
acrostics,
bunker boat EP,
Chaucer, or Keats.
which is about 4 minutes
There
of
are
stuff
no
that we
hit
now don't have
CDs
to
of
do
the secret
before
chorales of
Cloud Cycle,
Wagner or Beethoven.
which additionally saves time, and that means
For
that
the
we can
answer,
catch one
we
Cloud
need to
Cycle earlier
recognize
before
the
we climb the
unique
mountain.
roles which
So
the Bible
before we would
and
catch the
Shakespeare
69,
have
the 1
played
hour
in
and
the
9 minute Cloud
development
Cycle,
of Western
and this
culture.
run caught the 55.
No other single work
So
of literature
that's
has
really the
influenced
big time
modern
save here.
English more than
Doing
the
less
translation
beforehand so you
of
can
the
catch an
Holy
earlier
Bible,
Cloud Cycle,
published
and just
in
making the route a bit
1611
cleaner overall.
under the auspices of King James I. The King James Bible exemplifies the meaning of the word classic. It has been called the noblest monument of English prose, the very greatest achievement of the English language. It has served as an inspiration for generations of poets, dramatists, musicians, politicians, and orators. Countless people have learned to read by repeating the phrases in this, the only book their family possessed. Our constitutions and our laws have been profoundly shaped by its cadences and imagery. But even the glory of the King James Bible, compiled by a committee of 46 editors over the course of a decade, pales before the dazzling legacy of the Swan of Avon. The lowest estimate of Shakespeare's working vocabulary is 15,000 words, more than 3 times that of the King James Bible, and twice the size of his nearest competitor, John Milton. His poems and
No, this
plays
run is
were
old
written
patch.
without the aid of a
Just because I want to take
or
the record back,
thesaurus.
but I want to be running new
They
patch.
didn't exist yet.
New patch is
It was
faster,
all in his head.
and it also has fewer audio
When
hiccups, which I
Shakespeare
really
had a thought
despise.
for which Elizabethan English had no
But
word,
I don't
he
know
invented one.
how
The
much time
Oxford
I'm going to
English
save on new
Dictionary
patch, and I
lists
don't know where I'm going to
hundreds
save
of
the time.
everyday words and
It's
phrases, which made
it's
their
faster
first
in a
appearance
sort of
in the
overall
pages
way, but
of
it's
the
hard to say
Bard.
exactly where that takes form. So like if I can make an earlier buoy
Alligator,
cycle,
assassination,
which is already going to be pretty
Bedroom,
tight,
critic,
that's going to matter a lot,
dawn,
because that would be
design,
another 45 seconds off the
dialogue,
time.
employee, film,
But
glow,
that, I
gloomy,
don't know, that would be
gossip,
really challenging.
hint, hurry,
That would take a lot
investment, lonely,
of serious
luggage,
play, a lot of really
manager,
fast play.
switch, torture,
I was only
transcendence,
20
wormhole,
seconds ahead.
zany.
No, I think I was 40 seconds ahead on this run.
Hamlet alone contains
So I had
nearly
like
40
5
of these
seconds to spare on the buoy. So I need to save another 40 or another 50 seconds
this giddy exuberance
to
of
actually get a
invention.
faster buoy cycle. And if I could
Only
get that
one
faster
other
buoy cycle,
English author even
then that would
approaches
make it
Shakespeare's
reasonable
facility for
to try and go
coining
for a
new
faster cloud
words.
cycle,
Sir Francis Bacon.
or to throw in cinema more
In the
realistically.
modern era, the record
Cinema
holder
and
was Charles
potentially even
Dodgson,
windmill along
better
with it.
known
I'm
as
not sure.
Lewis Carroll. who, interestingly, also happens to be the second most quoted
15
author
more
in English,
minutes.
after
I
Shakespeare.
think I can finish my book. Nah, probably not. Too
Everyone
many
has
pages.
been profoundly molded
I'll read the
by
rest of it after this run.
influences of the King James Bible and Shakespeare. Like it or not, all of us peer at the world through the lenses of these great works. They are the primary source documents of modern English thought, the style guides of our minds. Contemplating these dazzling jewels of wisdom and eloquence gives rise to an extraordinary feeling, a potent, rare, and precious emotion with the potential to completely upset your life. An emotion powerful enough to make a man abandon his wife and children, forfeit career and reputation, lay down his possessions, and follow his heart without questioning. That sweet, sweet fusion of wonder and fear, irresistible attraction, and soul-numbing dread known as awe. Awe is the grail of artistic achievement. No other human emotion possesses such raw, transformative power, and none is more difficult to evoke. Few and far between are the works of man that qualify as truly awesome. It is awe that convinces a rabbi to spend a lifetime decoding Yahweh from the Pentateuch. Awe that sends millions of visitors each year to the pyramids of Giza, Guadalupe, and Mecca. It was awe that drove poor Delia Bacon to her doom. Now, please don't come away from this lecture thinking that the key to awesome game design is the installation of Easter eggs. Ordinary games with their contrived Easter eggs and cheat codes are like the Battery of the Month Club. You have to trudge down to the back of the store to get what you really came for. If superpower is what people really want, why not just give it to them? Is our imagination so impoverished that we have to resort to marketing gimmicks to keep players interested in our games? Awesome things don't hold anything back. Awesome things are rich and generous. The treasure is right there. One afternoon, I was sitting alone behind the counter at that old Radio Shack store. My boss had stepped out for some reason. An elderly woman walked through the front door. Like most of our customers, she was shabbily dressed, probably on a fixed income. I assumed she was there for her free battery, but instead, she placed a portable radio on the counter. This little radio came from the days when they boasted about the number of transistors inside on the case. It was completely wrapped in dirty white medical tape. The woman looked at me and asked, "Can you fix this?" Slowly, I unwrapped the medical tape, peeling away the layers until the back cover of the radio fell off, accompanied by a cloud of red dust. The interior of the radio was half eaten away by battery leakage and corrosion. I looked at the radio. I looked at the old woman. I looked back at the radio. I reached behind me, where the expensive alkaline batteries were hanging like prescription medication, and removed a gleaming 9-volt cell from its gold blister pack. Then I pulled a brand new transistor radio from a box, installed the alkaline, and helped the lady find her favorite station. No money changed hands. She left the store without saying a word. Awesome things are kind of like that. Bach offered his students very specific insight into the source of awe. In addition to BACH, 2 other sets of initials are also associated with Bach's music. These initials are not hidden in the notes. Instead, they're scrawled right across the top of the manuscript for the whole world to see. The initials are SDG and JJ. SDG stands for the Latin phrase Sole Deo Gloria, to the glory of God alone. JJ stands for Jesu Juva, help me, Jesus. Bach wrote all of his great masterpieces sub specie eternitatis, under the aspect of eternity. He did not compose only to please his sponsors or to win the approval of an audience. His work was his worship. Bach once wrote, "Music should have no other end and aim than the glory of God and the recreation of the soul. Where this is not kept in mind, there is no true music, but only an infernal clamor and ranting." The name of the power that moves you is not important. What is important is that you are moved. Awe is the foundation of religion. No other motivation can free you from the limits of personal achievement. Nothing else can teach you the art of flight. Computer games are barely 40 years old. Only a few words in our basic vocabulary have been established. A whole dictionary is waiting to be coined. The slate is clean. Someday soon, perhaps even in our lifetime, a game design will appear that will flash across our culture like lightning. It will be easy to recognize. It will be generous, giddy with exuberant inventiveness. Scholars will pick it apart for decades, perhaps centuries. It will be something wonderful, something terrifying, something awful. A few years ago, I was invited to speak at a conference in London. My wife joined me, and we took a day off for some sightseeing. We decided to visit England's second biggest tourist attraction, Stratford-upon-Avon. It was cold and rainy when our train arrived. Luckily, most of the attractions are just a short walk from the station. We visited Shakespeare's birthplace, a charming old house along the main street, which attracts millions of pilgrims every year, despite the complete lack of any evidence that Shakespeare was born there or even lived anywhere near it. We went past the school where Shakespeare learned to read and write, although no documents
Croy Laser
exist
to
to
stars,
prove his
yes.
attendance.
That's correct.
We visited Anne Hathaway's cottage,
I can send you my
the
splits again if
rustic
you want,
country farm where his
though I
wife
would encourage you to
spent
clear
her
the times out
childhood,
this time.
although no
unless you really
record
enjoy
shows
running
anyone
against
by
record
that
splits.
name ever having lived there. Finally, we came to the one location undeniably associated with Shakespeare, Trinity Parish Church, on the banks of the River Avon, where a man by that name is buried. This beautiful church is approached by a long walkway between rows of ancient gravestones, shaded by tall trees. The entrance door is surprisingly tiny. No cameras are allowed inside. The interior is dark and quiet. Despite the presence of busloads of tourists, the atmosphere is hushed and respectful. A few people are seated in the pews, deep in prayer. An aisle leads up the center of the church. The left side of the altar is brightly illuminated. On the wall above is a famous bust of the bard, quill in hand, gazing serenely at the crowd of pilgrims. On the floor beneath, surrounded by bouquets of flowers,
Okay.
at the very spot where Delia Bacon
Yeah, I
lost
understand.
her
It means you don't
mind,
have to fix the rest of the
the
splits.
gravestone of William Shakespeare bears this dire warning. Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man who spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Every year, 3 million pilgrims arrive from every nation on earth to approach this stone and consider the likeness of a man whose body of work can only be described
Shipwreck
as
vault before
awesome.
couch. Yeah, I need to fix my shipwreck splits
By
as well.
contrast,
Is
the
that it?
right
Oh yeah,
side of
cinema
the
went
altar
sort of
is
weird.
dark and featureless.
I don't know why, but the start
Nobody of any
eclipse split didn't
consequence
trigger.
is buried there. The only point of interest is a wooden
I'm not really gonna
case
worry about it too
of
much because it's one of the
simple
things that
design
should fix when I
carved
fix
of
the splitter.
dark oak.
But
Inside
it's gonna
the
take
case,
time.
sealed beneath a thick sheet of glass, lies a large open book. A plaque on the case identifies this book as a first edition of the King James Bible, published in 1611, when Shakespeare
I still have
was
4 minutes.
46.
I'm like, oh, I have to stop. The
Not
sun's
many
getting close.
pilgrims
No,
visit
not
this
really.
side of the altar. Most of those that do simply glance at the book, read the plaque, and move along. A few, more observant, note that the Bible happens to be opened to a page in the Old Testament, the book of Psalms, chapter 46. No explanation is given for this particular choice of pages. For the initiated, none is necessary. If you are of inquisitive bent, if you are intrigued by English history and literature,
Nearly there.
if you value your peace of mind, cover your ears now. In the year 1900, a scholar noticed something about the King James translation of Psalm 46. Something terrifying. Something wonderful. The 46th word from the beginning of Psalm 46 is shake. The 46th word from the end is spear. There are only 2 possibilities here. Either this is the finest coincidence ever recorded in the history of world literature, or it is not. The Earth revolves around only one sun and has only one moon. The moon happens to be 400 times smaller than the sun. The sun happens to be 400
I finished the
times
book. It
farther
had
away.
10 pages of a rules
And the
explanation to a
apparent
game that's on the back
paths of
cover.
the moon and sun in our sky happen to intersect exactly twice every month, which means that every now and then, at long yet precisely predictable intervals, the lunar disk slips across the face of the sun and just barely conceals it for a few wonderful,
Minute and a half.
terrible minutes.
It's 55:30 is the split time.
A fine coincidence, no?
Bleh.
In June of 1977, a little man with divergent eyes and a
Technically,
talent
I
for
should make
mischief
Eclipse be a part of the
ascended
cinema
a
major
hilltop
split, because
in
it
the
is
British
cinema,
village
right?
of
But
Untitled. At the summit of this hill is a tall, slender cross, a memorial to Catherine of Aragon,
I don't know.
first wife of Henry VIII. The sun, high in the south, cast the shadow of the cross.
It's sort of
upon the
nice to be able to
grassy
have this
hillside.
counter. I mean, not that it really matters. I know
At
the script
exactly
well enough
12
to know
noon,
when I can
The man
solve it.
removed from his pocket a bar magnet. He turned the magnet so its north pole was facing south and buried it under the shadow of the cross. 2 years later, A few hours before the publication of his first book, the man returned to that hillside, this time in the dead of night. He used a compass to locate the magnet he had buried. In that same place, he dug a hole in the ground and placed inside a ceramic container inscribed with the following words: I am the keeper of the Jewel of Masquerade,
Nearly there.
which lies waiting safe inside me.
For you or eternity. Like the length of that damn puzzle. Alright, new windmill route. Let's see if I can get this right the first time. I'm going to be taking it safe for the Blade 1 solution, just because I don't want to deal with that idea of having to fail that. Second hand is the word.
Made third hand by your interpretation of them. Things like that. As opposed to
This. What it is? I don't know what it is. Thank you for telling me. Or you. This stuff's easier to take, isn't it? Understandable. It's got people in it. This stuff. Scientific knowledge. It's hard to take. I don't know anything beyond that, because I haven't listened to that video in a year. Take notes on windmill. I'll just make a clip of it. Or a highlight of it, excuse me. That's how you start it, by going around. I mean, I did do a full run through yesterday, so I can make a highlight out of that, but this is going to be much easier on new version, because climbing those stairs is going to be a lot faster. Basically, the goal here is just to eliminate as much downtime as possible. Which is pretty reasonable, actually. We were able to cut out a lot of the downtime with the reroute. Not that there isn't still downtime, of course. It's the longest damn EP aside from... It's not. It's one of the longer EPs. And it's the most frustrating because you've just had to wait through the entire eclipse. And you're like, I want to be done waiting for EPs. But no. Like, eclipse is long enough that you can get dinner. This is not that long. This is only like a minute or two. But it's still really boring. Alright, now you book it over here. You do redirect, black line, and you grab blade 2 from up top. Yeah, you wait on the boat EPs, but you don't wait as much as you used to. I guess that's not true. Well, yeah, because you don't do the longest stretch, which was the one with desert. The one with desert was the worst. And we don't have to do that anymore, so... So speed strats involves going around the back and taking the wooden bridge before getting the CP. Maybe next run. That just seems scary. losing all of the time. But again, I only need to be 6 minutes ahead. So, oops, that's a wall. I think I'm supposed to walk up here. No, no, that's dumb. Good job, me. You walked the wrong way again. Bleed all of the time. That is the correct way to finish any run, which is 2 hours long. Sigh. Also, the reason Bodhi Ps don't feel like as much of waiting is because you're lining up where the next click is going to be, which requires a certain amount of attention. Good. Not everyone sat through the eclipse. I'm glad. It's not worth it. There's enough of the run at the end. When it was like just Thundercloud, it was even better because there was really none of the run afterwards. That might actually be possible. I should figure that out. Because you get 2 tries at it, maybe. You might get 2 tries at it. Because when you send the boat back around, you might have the space to start it again. I'm honestly not certain. You still scare me. There's so many days of stress worrying about these damn ETs. Even though they're consistent now, they still scare me. No, they're consistent because we found consistent setups for them about 6 months ago. The trick involves not... I wish I had a mouse visualizer. I'll make sure I have one set up before I get started again on new patch. But the trick involves not just blindly trying to push to the left. If you aggressively push to the left, you will not get them. Or they are inconsistent. You have to make use of the redirecting nature, of the sort of sliding nature of puzzles, where if you push to the right, it goes down a bit or up a bit. And if you push to the left, you can push against the walls of puzzles and it'll still move you. And that pushing motion somehow jumps the gaps more easily. I don't honestly know why, but it does. And with that, there's basically no risk of failing them anymore, which is really nice. Would I have a second chance at Monastery? Not at all. So I'd have to be there. Yeah, I don't recall. I think I do recall. We were looking for a better way to find it, and we just started trying things, and that happened to work. So there's yeah, RIP controller strats. To be fair, controller strats were for the green Bodhi P, the really long one, and we still have to do something special for that. We have to turn up our sensitivity. Controller strats would still be acceptable for that if you had a controller, and it would save a little bit of time. These ones, I think Ferret did do them with controller, but they didn't work any better. I'm also really curious to have a mouse visualizer because I don't know what my inputs are for some of the puzzles. I know what I think I'm inputting, but I also have done them enough. No, not more generally. These ones in particular have always been terrible. The green one we also have a solution for. Again, it's just higher sensitivity. I know what I think I'm doing, but my muscle memory is going to correct for things that work rather than things that don't work. No, I think all the Bodhi Ps are still good, are good now. Green Bodhi P is still reasonable. Again, it costs a bit of time, but it means you can do it at speed 5, which is faster than speed 4. I think we're going to be unable to do the underside EP in new patch, though, at speed 5. I don't do it in this run. You don't have to. There's a couple of connections that are atrocious if you don't turn up the sensitivity, which is why we do. So. I don't remember where I'm supposed to stop this. I think that was a bit too late, but we'll see. Yeah, it was. One tick too late. Here we go. It's a PB. It's also a record by a decent bit of time.